Someone sent me this game at 2 in the morning.
No context, no explanation, just a link and 3 words. Trust me, bro. Now, I've been sent a lot of games like that. Most of them don't survive the first 20 minutes of my attention. This one kept me until sunrise.
And the thing is, I still can't fully explain why.
Which is exactly why we're here today. Because Mouse, PI for Hire, is one of the most genuinely strange, genuinely interesting things to come out of the indie space this year. And whether it's a brilliant piece of game design, or just really, really good marketing, is a question worth actually sitting with. So let's sit with it. Okay, so for the people who have no idea what Mouse is, picture this. It's the 1930s. The city is all shadows and rain. Jazz is playing somewhere in the distance. A detective is on a case that's more dangerous than it looks. The detective is a mouse. I know how that sounds. Stay with me. PI for Hire is a first-person shooter built entirely around the visual language of 1930s rubber hose animation. That bouncy, wiggly, exaggerated cartoon style you might recognize from old Fleischer Studio shorts or early Disney. Everything in this world moves like it was hand-drawn almost 100 years ago. But here's the part that actually makes it interesting. Underneath that cheerful cartoon surface, this game is telling a proper noir detective story. Corruption, crime, moral ambiguity. The kind of city that chews people up quietly. Just, everyone's a cartoon animal, so. And the combination of those two things, the visual innocence of the art style against the darker weight of the narrative, is where Mouse starts doing something genuinely unusual. Here's something worth understanding about this aesthetic. Rubber hose animation, that specific 1930s visual style, essentially disappeared from mainstream media by the 1940s. It got replaced. More refined styles took over. And for decades, this entire visual era just kind of sat there in the archive. Occasionally referenced, occasionally winked at, almost never actually lived in. Mouse doesn't reference that era. It reconstructs it. Every surface, every character, every shadow, it all operates within the internal logic of that visual world. And the level of discipline that requires is actually pretty remarkable. This isn't a game that looks old-fashioned by accident. It looks exactly the way the developers intended it to look. And then you fire a gun. And this is where the tonal contrast starts doing real work. Because the violence, filtered entirely through this rubbery, bouncy cartoon animation, creates something genuinely strange to experience. It's playful and dark at the same time. Neither quality fully cancels the other out. They coexist. And that coexistence creates a kind of tension that the noir genre has always understood how to use. There's something almost subversive about it, in the best possible way. And the sound design, I have to mention the sound design, because it's carrying an enormous amount of quiet weight here. There's a jazz-influenced score that shifts in texture depending on whether you're investigating or in the middle of a fight. The city breathes. Rain, footsteps, muffled conversations from buildings you'll never enter. For a game this visually unconventional, the audio understands exactly what it needs to be. All right, let's talk about the actual game. Because aesthetic alone doesn't carry 60 minutes of your time, eventually the design has to hold its own. Mouse splits its experience across 2 modes. The first is investigation. You're moving through the city, following leads, examining the environment. These sections are deliberately paced. They lean into the detective premise, asking you to observe and piece things together. They're not fast. They're not supposed to be. And honestly, they work. Because the city is interesting enough that slowing down inside it doesn't feel like a chore. Then the second mode kicks in, and that's combat. The shooting has a rhythm to it that took me a little while to lock into. But once it clicks, it genuinely clicks. It's not competing with military shooters for technical precision. It's going for something more fluid, more movement-based, sliding, repositioning, the kind of spatial awareness that fits a world built around cartoon physics. It suits the game, more than you'd expect it to. What Mouse manages, and this is harder than it looks, is keeping those 2 modes in genuine conversation with each other. The investigation sections stop the combat from becoming noise. The combat stops the investigation from becoming a walking simulator. That structural balance is the backbone of the experience. And for the most part, it holds. There are also details in the environments worth mentioning. The world isn't just a backdrop. There are things to notice. Visual storytelling built into architecture, signage, the way characters use the space. The city has a history that extends beyond the edges of your case. That kind of environmental craft is easy to overlook, but it's usually the difference between a game that feels alive and one that just looks it. So what does Mouse P.I. for Hire actually nail? The art direction is exceptional, and I want to be specific about that word, because it gets used lazily a lot. Here, it means something real. Every visual choice in this game feels intentional and internally consistent. The palette, the silhouettes, the way light and shadow interact. There's a coherent visual philosophy behind every single frame. In an era where most games reach for the same generic cinematic realism look, something this committed to a specific and unconventional aesthetic is immediately, genuinely memorable. The world building is also stronger than the premise suggests. A 1930s cartoon city could have easily been a thin backdrop, a coat of paint over a standard FPS structure. Instead, Mouse populates its world with enough specificity that the city starts to feel like it exists independently of your case. That's not nothing, that's actual craft. And here's the one that's easy to underrate. Mouse knows exactly what game it is. That sounds obvious. It isn't. A lot of games can't answer that question cleanly. They add systems, they chase trends, they expand scope until the original identity gets buried under everything that got added to it. Mouse P.I. for Hire doesn't do any of that. It has a clear vision. It builds within that vision with confidence, and the result is a game that feels focused, which in design almost always produces a better experience than ambition without direction. So, overhyped or masterpiece? Here's what I keep coming back to. Mouse P.I. for Hire was built by a small team, with a genuinely unconventional vision, without the safety net of an established IP or a guaranteed audience, in a market that rewards familiarity far more reliably than it rewards originality. And they made something that looks like nothing else. Something with a coherent artistic identity, a tonal ambition that actually lands, and a design clarity that a lot of much larger, much more expensive games spend years trying to find, and rarely do. Is it a masterpiece in the classical sense? No. The mid-game stumbles. The mechanical depth has a ceiling. There are places where the seams show. But is it the work of people who genuinely cared about what they were making and had a vision clear enough to execute it in an industry that doesn't always reward either of those things? Yeah, genuinely yeah. And if you're the kind of person who finds that interesting, who cares about games that are trying something rather than games that are playing it safe, then Mouse P.I. for Hire is probably worth your evening. There's a particular kind of creativity that only survives in small studios, the kind that doesn't get diluted by committees or quarterly targets. Mouse P.I. for Hire is that kind of game. And those are worth protecting.